Realm presents The Shadow Files of Morgan Knox. Episode 9.
He looks at her with confusion. The piercing blue of his eye gone the color of a churning sea. And it is the sea that she's caught in now, the sea rushing up her nose and into her lungs. The world's getting heavier with every passing second. Tides pull her down. Ellen isn't answering. Danny isn't answering. Reception isn't answering. At the bottom of the ocean is the Codex, its fell tentacles reaching for her from the depths. And if she lets them pull her down, she will die. But Knox learned how to swim before she learned to walk, held aloft by her mother's caring hands. It's not over yet. No one picking up, not even the receptionist. Means shit's gone south, she says, throwing on her coat. Our fox might have gotten out. Craddock's brow narrows on the good side of his face. Got to protect the hens. You got hens? Knox starts, but she's already halfway to the door. You're full of surprises, ain't you? He grunts in response. Take care of yours, he says, and I'll check on mine. And maybe there's something to be said about shared trauma, she thinks. Maybe there's something to be said about all those support groups that never really worked for her before. Because he doesn't ask her to stay. Bellevue Hospital looks down at her like some damned beast. Black flames lick at its hundreds of eyes, its dozens of mouths, and all the denizens of the city can do is flee in terror. Knox stands outside with her heart beating war drums and mortars whistling in her ears. But it isn't Jerry at the other side of this one. It isn't anything of this earth. The Codex. It all comes back to the Codex. Reaching out for something. Maybe for her. Half a dozen fire engines outside are doing their best to contain the eldritch fires. Gallons of water hiss into vapor before they ever touch the flames. Screams, names, wordless howls, pleas for safety haunt her. And it takes everything in her power not to go from survivor to survivor, asking what happened. None of them are burnt, not a single one. But they all look like they've had their souls sucked right out of their bodies. Morgan Knox is somewhere else, some other place where she can think. Her body's moving toward the fire. There are so many people that need saving. She's going over the top again. The people running away are a river of flesh and momentum. But Knox knows these currents. She slips sideways into the abyss. Inside, there aren't any flames. Some kind of mass hysteria outbreak? She'd seen something like this once before, on a subway platform a couple of years ago, and it hadn't gone well then. It wouldn't go well now unless she puts an end to it. Farther in, the crowd thins. It looks like most of the people who can leave already have. But not everyone can leave. The howls of the dying and the miserable echo like chants down the hall. Her ears ring with them. They aren't crying out in English or in Spanish, or in any language she knows, and yet she feels that they're calling for her. On every lip, from every tongue, she hears her own name. There's a rose that grows. She pulls her gun. Down, down, farther and farther in. The morgue's in the basement. Better to keep the bodies cool, they say. But now she thinks it's just to make this whole experience as horrifying as possible. As she rounds the staircase, she hears someone shuffling below her. Knox frowns. Exit's the other way, she calls. But there isn't any answer. Cursing under her breath, she takes another step down. The stair changes to flesh, just as her feet meet it. The walls to bleeding muscle and sinew. She wants to close her eyes. She wants to count to 10, but she doesn't have the time to stop. She can see the figure now, huddled up against the door to the morgue. Ellen Jacobs, staring in horror at something she cannot name. Knox stows the gun and runs to her. Ellen, it's me, she says. Her hands move in practiced succession. Pulse is out of this world. Breathing's ragged, but her pupils look like they're dilating when exposed to the dim glow of Morgan's lighter. Come on, it's Morgan. Please, she thinks, but this she leaves unspoken. Ellen's staring at the corner, mouthing something Knox can't hear. Morgan curses under her breath. If only she had a hip flask. Something to drip on her face or waft beneath her nose. Something to shock the system. But she doesn't have any of those. I'm sorry about this, Knox says. She swallows her discomfort and slaps Ellen across the face. Ellen sputters, holding a hand to her cheek, looking at Knox in horror. What? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Are you okay? Knox asks her. She glances up at the stairwell. Nothing's there. But she can't shake the feeling that something's watching. Ellen follows her gaze. All at once it comes back to her. Fuck. Danny. She shoulders the morgue's door open and charges in. Knox follows hot on her heels, and then her legs almost give out on her. Because there's Danny on the floor, his arm twisting in ways it shouldn't, his face beaten black and blue. He's curled up by the desk, sputtering, heaving, staring straight ahead. He's Danny, and he isn't. He's Danny, and he's every boy just like him she lost on the fields of the Marne. Ellen's already kneeling beside him, already running through the same checklist Knox is using. Pulse, breathing, eyes. Don't just stand there, come help me. When Morgan kneels by him, she has to keep from cradling him. It won't help, she knows it won't, but his eyes flutter open. They're glassy. He can't seem to focus on anything when she waves a finger in front of him. But he sees her, and he smiles with his mouth full of blood. Sorry, boss. Curiosity killed the cat, huh? You don't have anything to apologize for, Knox says to him. You haven't done anything wrong. He swallows, blinks, his unfocused eyes never lingering in one place. I looked at the book. She can't say anything. Anger wells up and dies. Of course he looked. Mailing artifacts like this to herself without knowing what they do. She might as well have mailed him a canister of mustard gas labeled party favors. It's just... It kept whispering, calling to me. When I peeked, I swore I saw my name on the front, so I opened it. And when I read it, Morgan, the things I saw... Please, Knox says. Danny, you don't have to keep going. It's evil. We have to destroy it. Something like that shouldn't exist. You need to save your strength, Knox says. She smooths his hair. Just focus on that for now. I'll try, he says. Ellen's cutting open his shirt to get a better look at his injuries. Danny winces as Ellen touches his ribs. Morgan doesn't look. She can't trust herself to tell what's real and what isn't. Boss? It better be important, Danny. All you should be thinking about is holding on. They got the book. What happened? Knox asks. It was after I peeked, Danny says. I heard this loud sound, and it woke me from that fucking nightmare. It was Ellen hitting the floor. The whole place got gassed or something. People were losing their minds. There were 3 black-eyed goons in the room, right there. They made straight for it, and I tried to fight them, but... So it's her fault. Knox stares down at him, her hands falling still as the weight of it hits her. You did your best, Danny, Knox says. It hurts just to say it. And what hurts more is Ellen's voice cutting through the mortars, the screams, the prayers of boys long since dead. I think you should go. But he's... Knox starts. She stops herself, doesn't want to admit how badly he's hurt. Ellen's look is a scalpel, peeling her away, slicing where it'll hurt most. He's hurt because of you. You don't get to be the one to tend to him. You should go. Danny's mumbling something, but neither of them can hear it. Morgan can't look. Her eyes fall on the ransacked morgue, the drawers pulled out, the smashed chairs and broken tables. Danny put up a hell of a fight. Because of her. Ellen's right. There's no 2 ways about it. She's right. All of this is her fault. Morgan Knox gets to her feet. Take him to my office. It'll be safe there. Your office? Ellen says. You expect me to work in your office? I worked in the trenches for years, Ellen. Knox snaps. The office is just fine. This place is going to be packed with cops any second now. And them you can't work around. Ellen glares at her, her jaw clenched tight. She doesn't have an argument. And there is nothing in the world Ellen Jacobs hates more than admitting defeat. She and Knox have that in common. What happened here was a defeat. Danny's blood is on her hands. Knowing he's going to make it through doesn't make it feel any better. The sight of him broken is going to haunt her worse than any vision ever has. So she doesn't dare look back on them as she goes. Not even when Danny calls her name. Six in the corner. That's what he thinks, anyway. Dakota knows otherwise. Tyler Everett came up here from Virginia maybe a month ago. Talked all sorts of game, too. Came with his own handmade cue and his own hand-painted cue ball to match. Said he was the hottest shot there was to find in the South, out looking for the hottest shot in the East. Her name had come up, he'd said. She hadn't asked him which name. It didn't really matter. Dakota Slim's the hottest shot in the East, no doubt about it. Maybe in the West, too. And if Everett really was the best in the South, then she might as well move on down to Atlanta and open up her own pool hall. Dakota doesn't bother to watch him work. The loud clack of cue-meeting ball is drowned out by the gentle clink of ice against glass, by the cool bitterness of her spiced rum, by the fire in her throat and chest that soon follows. Everett curses under his breath. Sorry about it, Dakota says. She sets her glass down on the table. Everett's made a goddamn state of things. Worse than Grand Central at noon. The 6 is sitting right up against the buffer, next to the 10 Dakota needs. But the fatal 8 is getting too close for comfort. The cue's watching the 10 from the other side of the board. Through the crowd Everett's left. She smirks. $20 says I'll sink it without touching the 8. $20? $20. If I lose, I'll even sing you a song. Maybe Everett's the sort of guy who always wanted to take him home a siren. His eyes light up at the mention of a song. Dakota hides her smile behind another sip of her drink. And it's then, when she tips the glass up, that Dakota sees her. Slim, dark, and beautiful, wearing a suit better than Bulldog Drummond himself. Knox always knows exactly where to find her. And when it comes to Knox, Dakota doesn't mind being found. But she does notice something in Morgan's eyes. She reads it as easy as she reads Everett's rising anxiety. Morgan's fucked up tonight, hasn't she? $20 isn't bad for an hour's work. Most nights, she makes a show of bending over to line up a shot. You can usually buy up a guy's betting price that way. But she's got other shit to worry about now. The shot's quick. She jumps the cue over the crowd, where it lands with enough momentum to knock the 10 free. Dakota taps the table. No songs tonight. Everett's laying a Jackson out when Knox reaches them. Morgan looks from him to Dakota, then taps him on the shoulder. Mind if I steal your date? The joke's a real lead balloon. Everett starts to argue, but Dakota stops him. On second thought, keep the 20. Buy yourself something nice. I'll see you next week, Ty. His eyes narrow. He takes the 20 back, then picks up his cue and fancy cue ball. Yeah, see you next week, Dakota. She waves him off as Morgan comes to her side. Without so much as a word, she picks up Dakota's drink and finishes it. The glass lands with a thunk on the table. Morgan stuffs her hands in her pockets and frowns at the board. But whatever she's seeing there, it ain't billiards. She wraps an arm around Morgan's shoulder. Santee's is a blessing. No one bats an eye. Dark and stormy kind of night? Yeah, Morgan answers. She doesn't move. Dakota keeps herself from frowning as she flags down a server with her spare hand. She puts in the order, then turns her attention back to Morgan. Not a word in the meantime. This was bad, wasn't it? Whenever something had gone down for Dakota, Knox had always known better than to ask. She always knew just what to say to take Dakota's mind off of things. Always came in with that smirk and a free drink. Dakota Slim has, in fact, sold 100 mooks, 100 shares of the Brooklyn Bridge, but conning someone is different from caring about them. She isn't good at the latter, but she wants to be good at it. She wants to try. Neither of them ends up saying anything before the server hurries over with their drinks. Dakota takes them from the tray, knowing Knox won't budge from her spot. "Come on," she says. "Let's find a place to sit." Morgan grunts. Dakota knows just the place to go. There's a booth the musicians use after a show toward the back of the joint. Keeps people from swarming them afterwards. Dakota's been there a couple times with Danny and Franklin. Nobody's playing tonight. Hardly anyone's even here, so it should be empty. Dakota sits first, expecting that Morgan will take the other side. That's the way it's always been. But to Dakota's surprise, Morgan sits right next to her. Their shoulders brush as Morgan pounds half her drink in one go. "Morgan," Dakota starts. "Have you ever fucked up?" Knox says. "I figure most of the people in this city are here because they fucked up," Dakota says. "I mean, really fucked up." Dakota thinks of Chicago. "Yes." For a while, Morgan doesn't say anything. She stares into what remains of her drink, looking for some answer she isn't going to find. The fingers of one hand drum a familiar rhythm on the table. The others curl around Dakota's. A couple hours ago, Dakota had been looking forward to seeing Morgan again. Something she wanted to tell her. But it's hard to find the words now, when the air between them is thicker than city smog. "What did you do?" Morgan asks, quiet. "I left," Dakota says. She isn't afraid of admitting it. She left, the way she always had, and she never looked back. Never cried about it at night. Never woke up wondering if she could have done anything differently. If she could have stopped it. Dakota's good at lying, especially to herself. "You could leave." "I can't leave, Danny," Morgan mumbles. "Probably bleeding in my office right now." An alley. A body. A memory Dakota doesn't want to consider. Knox slumps against her. She wants to say the words. She can only manage a name. Morgan. The other half of Morgan's drink goes right down the hatch. One and only. Conning a man out of every cent he's got? Easy. Becoming a new woman every few months? Candy from a baby. Keeping secrets? Safe as Camp Knox. But it was Camp Knox she was about to raid. She cups Morgan's face. In her eyes, Dakota can see herself, and it scares her. All of this does. I've been saving up some money. For that spot you and me always talked about. Away from everything. I was gonna leave at the end of the month, but we can go sooner. As soon as Danny's better, we can go. And here, this is something better than any talkie. Better than any song she's ever heard. She can see the hope in Morgan's eyes. Can see her face soften and her lips part. Can see the dream there. Dakota knows just what it looks like. A house somewhere down south, where warm breezes sing you lovesick ballads. The beach, a short stroll away. Good food that magically appears on their table every night, since neither of them can cook. Dakota's first sight of the ocean was Coney Island's beach. But she knows it isn't the same as the real thing. Morgan always says the waves sounded different. Dakota wants to hear them. In her mind, they're there on the shore, the two of them. The sand between their toes, their only worry in the world. Knox can get some sleep. Dakota won't have to look over her shoulder. Morgan swallows. She looks away. You really think we're meant for that kind of life? Dakota frowns. We deserve to be happy, too. That's not what I meant, Morgan says. I don't think people like us get to live those lives. Is that what you think? Or what tonight's telling you to think? Dakota says. It's the truth. You know it isn't. We'd get bored. We'd ruin it. An open door, and a woman who can't make herself come in. Dakota sucks her teeth, an old habit her mother and all the switches in the world couldn't fix. Dakota sighs. One bad night doesn't have to decide the rest of your life. Too many bad nights, Morgan mumbles. Too many bodies. Kids, Dakota. Danny's on the older side. Can you believe that? All the people I've gotten hurt, and he's on the older side. How bad is it? With Danny? Concussion, 2 cracked ribs, broken arm. Morgan says. There's a certain coldness as she rattles them off. The way she was talking, Dakota expected worse. So he'll be okay. That doesn't make it right. You fixed him up, didn't you? No, Morgan says. She groans, her head lolling back like the answers are right there on the ceiling. They never are. You left him there? Dakota asks with growing concern. No, Ellen had to do it. Morgan closes her eyes. Said it wasn't my place to help when I was the reason he got hurt. You got some friends, Morgan. Yeah, you're one to talk, ain't you? Morgan doesn't know much about her, which is fine. But it means sometimes she jabs her where it hurts without even realizing. Yeah, Dakota is one to talk, isn't she? Running with grifters and gunsels, bootleggers and bastards. And that was if she ran with anyone at all. But she ran with Morgan sometimes. Really ran with her. The two of them. They never had to talk about where they were going. Except tonight. Dakota, I'm sorry. Morgan starts. But Dakota shakes her head. She's trying to think of something to say that might get through Morgan's thick skull. But it's hard to find a sledgehammer when your head's a mess of its own. It's fine, she says, shrugging. It's just... way I see it from here, you either stay or go. And if you're asking me, it's always better to go. But it's just then that she sees him. He's big. Bigger than any of the other fellas lounging around. Man's a raging bull. Dakota doesn't like the look of him. Dakota? Morgan says. Right here, Tiger. Dakota says. But she keeps her eyes on the man. He turns toward them, takes off his hat. What's a white guy doing here? And worse, what's that on his face? It took her a second to spot it, but is that an opera mask or something? I was thinking... What were you thinking? Asks Dakota. She keeps her eyes on the big man toward the front of the bar. He's making a beeline for their booth. When his eyes land on hers, she feels like she's underwater again. Talk about cold glares. She's got chills just looking at him. That voice screams louder in her mind. Run, run, run. But she can't. Not right now. It's just stay or go, right? Morgan mumbles. She's drunk, isn't she? Fuck. That man's lumbering over. Dakota's dealt with creeps before. Maybe she can convince him to leave them alone. Why don't you tell me about it in a second? I gotta go powder my nose. Back in a flash. She slides out of the booth, but Morgan clings to her arm. She really must be drunk. It's fine, it's fine. Dakota's just gotta make sure she's safe, and that this 2-bit Lon Chaney doesn't mess with her. That other broad was bad enough. She pulls her arm away. The man's already most of the way there. A ghost if Dakota ever saw one. Whatever. Not the first time she's had to deal with a ghost. "Excuse me, pal, but I'm having a private—"
"Not you."
he growls. He shoulder checks her on his way to the booth. Fire fills Dakota's belly. No one treats her like that. She grabs him by the shoulder.
"Where do you think you're going? I'm trying to talk to you."
"Dakota, it's fine," Knox says. Sounds like she's just gotten beaten up in an alley. Like she's slumped over with a bottle at her fingertips making bad jokes. "Don't you worry about me." But it's hard not to. And harder still, as the man storms to the table and slams his open palm down atop it. The sound echoes through the bar. Santi's is never quiet. Could never be quiet. But it hushes down now. Fellas drop the baseball talk to a minimum just to hear what's going on over there.
"Run."
That voice is the low thrum of the bass. She can feel it building in her lungs, in her bones, in her blood. They are all looking at her. She needs to run. Dakota plants her heels. If this weird-ass white guy is going to talk to Morgan like that, she can't leave her alone. Except that they aren't even saying anything to each other when Dakota slides into a seat across from Knox. They're just staring at one another. The two of them are in their own silent movie, looks like, and all Dakota can do is wait for the next title card. It comes when she looks down at the man's scarred, craggy hand and the photo showing from beneath his fingers. A little white girl, mud smeared on her face, with a stuffed cat clutched close to her chest. Grinning from ear to ear, but there's something off about it too. It takes Dakota a second to realize the girl's in old army fatigues, and that there's a rifle slung across her back. Some kind of pea shooter like they give the boys down south. Morgan looks at that photo like it's bit her. Couldn't be... Just how much does she know about Morgan anyway? Spent a few years overseas during the war. Maybe this guy was part of it? But the way he's looking at her, and the way she's looking at him, this ain't that kind of story. Someone's pulled the blanket off that ghost. His arms shaking, his breathing's a slurred rasp, like an old flea-bitten mutt. That's what he sounds like. That's how he's shaking. And that's the big kicked dog look he's giving her now. He doesn't say anything. Slaps the picture again. Morgan sinks back into the chair. "Craddock."
"How can you live with yourself?"
Whatever fucked up his face, fucked up his talking. It's hard to make out what he's saying. Spittle flies from the good corner of his lips.
"Here? This place?"
"Craddock," Morgan repeats. She's raising her hands this time, and Dakota feels an instinctive anxiety. "Drop your weapons,"
"You know what they'll do.
he says.
To you, to the city, to her. And you're here?"
Morgan picks up the glass. She's swaying a little too, but she tips it to her lips all the same. Ice clinks against ice. The man's breathing gets worse.
"Thought you were better,"
he says. Venom. That must be what's landing on the back of Dakota's hand as he talks.
"But you're wasting your bloody time."
Dakota wants to tell him that she's welcome to waste all the time she wants, but Morgan's never been one to let other people speak for her. She meets the man's ruined eye. "That what you think I'm doing?" He nods, slams the photo again. Morgan sucks her teeth. "Thought we had an understanding, Craddock. Thought we got each other."
"I did too,"
the man rumbles. "Now, seeing as you don't know her, you mind hitting the pavement, buddy?" Dakota says. She shoots him her best glare, but this is a man who has weathered far worse. Might as well stare down a storm. Morgan half chuckles, the sort of sound you'd hear on death row. "You know, Dakota, I think you're onto something. Always better to go, right, Morgan?" Dakota starts. "See you down south, Slim," Morgan answers. "Keep the place warm for me." He watches, just as Dakota does, as Morgan half walks and half stumbles her way to the door. More than once, she bumps into someone on the way out. But she is on the way out. Gone, without any explanation at all. Craddock grunts. He doesn't look at Dakota either as he leaves. Just flips up the collar on his jacket and pulls his hat down low. The photo goes back into a jacket pocket. That... She couldn't be serious, could she? Dakota's heart drops into her stomach. Saying goodbye? And then they're both gone, and she is left standing in their wake. Like the papers falling from Wall Street buildings, the hints of what's just happened spin in lazy circles around her mind. Her errant thoughts float from this breeze to the next, as she desperately tries to catch them. Run. Go after her. Tell someone. Run. 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 Don't get involved. You never get involved. But one of those thoughts lands square in front of her. She's going to do something stupid, isn't she? 5 years ago, in a dark alley, a gun still warm at her feet, Dakota Slim swore she'd never let anyone else lose their life if she could help it. And there's that image of Morgan. Wan, lips slightly opened, covered in blood, never smiling again. So Morgan won't stop to explain any of this. So she doesn't know where this idiot is going. Danny's up at her office. He'll know. People will let a well-dressed dame go damn near anywhere she pleases, sure as the sun's setting in the west, or taxes going up. Dakota Slim, at her worst, dresses better than most broads at their best. And she doesn't make an exception tonight. Not that she had much choice in the matter when Morgan's being such an idiot. Time's of the essence. A fur coat, thrown over her slinky pool shark dress, is the best she can do. It's gotta be pretty good, though. The second she walks into the lobby, the eyes are already on her. Tongue's already wagging. Voices already telling stories that aren't hers, and never will be. She pays them no mind, but she does pay building security a cool $50 to let her upstairs. Pool sharking pays well. So do the other things. The directory tells her Knox Investigations operates on the 14th floor. So that's where she goes. Step after too quick step. Security said they've got to be popular, since so many people keep heading up today. Made some joke about Dakota not wearing out Mr. Knox too much. She smiled and said she doesn't plan to. And the lie came as easily as sinking a ball. But it's a little different now that she's standing outside the room. The walls here are so thin she can hear the murmur of their voices on the other side of the door. Can't make out the words, but she thinks she can make out some of the people. Danny she knows, even if he's kinda whiny from the pain. Franklin's gotta be there too, although he doesn't talk much. There's another, rougher voice. Gotta be a big guy with that kind of resonance. A woman, a little deep-voiced, sounds concerned. Last, there's the clearest of them. A man's voice so smooth and calm, it might very well be some crooner on the radio, hawking his latest record. Danny's friends, and probably Morgan's too. People she's mostly never met. How are they going to take it when she gives them the news? Do they know the kind of shit Morgan gets up to? They've got to. They must know her better than she does. What if she walks in there, tells them she thinks Morgan's off to the big jazz bar in the sky, and they don't believe her? What then? But that's more planning than Dakota's frayed nerves can do right now. Every time she closes her eyes, it's there. The alley. The gun. The boy's face shifting into Morgan's. But people listen to well-dressed dames, don't they? She doesn't knock before she opens the door. Just walks right on in during the middle of a conversation. There's the big guy, standing over by the window, looking like a bulldog made into a man. Halfway through laughing, he stops when he catches sight of her. There's Danny in the center, sitting on a desk. A handsome woman's wrapping bandages around his chest, and Danny's making some joke or another. But they both look up at her when she comes in. So does Franklin, his brows crawling up his face in surprise. But it's the smooth-voiced man that surprises Dakota the most. A black man, wearing a badge on the chest of his coat, like it's something to be proud of. Who the fuck is he? His eyes narrow as soon as she sees him. Maybe he can tell, somehow, what the sight of a badge does to her. "You in the wrong room, ma'am," says the big guy. "That depends. Danny, all these fellas know Morgan?" Dakota says. All eyes jump to Danny, except for the cops. Danny offers a friendly smile, even when he's had his face beaten in. Where's he get that kind of energy? "Yeah, you gotta pardon Abe. His wife doesn't let him hang around pretty dames, so he doesn't know how to act." Abe, the big guy, grunts. "Mrs. Moskowitz never said anything like that, Silver Spoon. You're gonna give her a bad impression." Kind of too late for that. Joking around at a time like this? Well, they are Morgan's friends. "That guy over there's Ray, and this is Dr. Jacobs," Danny continues. Ellen gives her a polite nod, but continues about her work. Ray leans forward, adjusts his coat, so that the badge is somehow more prominent. "If you're one of Morgan's clients, we're afraid she's unavailable. Anything I can help you with?" Dakota looks over all of them. These are the guys she's going to have to rely on, huh? Well, at least they look like they can fight. Except for Danny. He looks like a peach someone left knocking around the bottom of the grocery bin. She's in trouble. "Any of you know some big fella got half his face melted off?" Abe punches his hand. "Craddock. That's that bastard's name. He causing you any trouble? Let me tell you, when it comes to that guy, I'm just looking for a reason." Ray frowns. "You can't threaten violence on a corpse, Mr. Moskowitz." "He ain't dead. I saw him a few hours ago, maybe." Abe scowls. "Fucker hit me in the back of the head and stole my cab. Found it outside my place when I came to, like some kind of sick joke. We got unfinished business. So where'd you see this cheating bastard?" And she'd let Morgan run off with him. Peachy. Dakota pulls her jacket tighter around herself, as Ray pinches the bridge of his nose. At Santis. Walked right to Morgan, slammed a photo down on the table, and kept yelling at her about something. Told her she was wasting her time, when they should have been handling something else. "What kind of something else?" Dr. Jacobs asks, in the sort of forlorn tone that tells Dakota they've got Morgan in common. "I don't know." Sounded heavy. "He said the whole city was in danger," Dakota says. The good doctor practically snaps her scissors shut on a section of bandage. "What happened then?" Danny asks. His baby face has gone serious. It doesn't suit him. Franklin takes his hand, and it looks like it calms him some. "Why isn't she here with you?" "She went with him," Dakota answers. "What?" says Ray. Listen, I know you're looking for explanations or answers, but I don't have those for you. I came here because I'm worried about her. She was in a real bad way when she showed up. Felt awful about whatever happened to you, Danny, and I kept telling her it would be all right. In a few months, maybe." The doctor chimes in, but she just wouldn't listen. It was all doom and gloom. And then this guy comes in, berates her, and she leaves with him. Says goodbye like she's never gonna see me again. I'm worried. So I'm here, because I figure maybe you guys know where she went and can keep her from doing something stupid. Outside, several stories down, the city's cacophonous voice rises up. In the relative silence of Morgan's office, these sounds take on new weight. And for a while, Dakota listens to them. If she cracked open her ribs, it would probably sound just like that, wouldn't it? "Please," she says. "Somebody's got to go after her, and it can't be me." The big guy comes over. He reaches out to put a hand on her shoulder. But when she shakes her head, he draws his mitt back to scratch at his beard instead. "Don't you worry. We'll find her." "Gonna need some guys," Danny says. The words come out a little fuzzy, thanks to his swollen lip. Next to him, Franklin sighs.
You can't be serious, baby. You need to relax.
It's bed rest for you, Dan, says Jacobs. But Danny's already pulling away, already standing on unsteady feet and trying to stretch out a wound that won't respond well. His wince is met with more sighs. Dakota has to hand it to him. For a spoiled rich boy, Danny's more willing than most to get his hands dirty.
Morgan was banged up worse than this when she helped my pals out. I'm not gonna let her down now.
You've spent too much time around her, Dakota says with a small smile.
That's what I keep saying,
says Franklin. Truth is, if she knew how to handle herself better in a fight, she'd be rushing in with them. But the second anyone starts shooting, she knows she'll freeze. There's no need to worry, Dr. Jacobs. I've got an idea where she's headed, and I can have a squad there with us in a few minutes. Danny won't come to any trouble, says Ray. It's a calm statement, a smooth one, like a radio ad for some smoke or another. But not to the big guy. Abe's rounding on him, thrusting a finger in his face.
No cops. Not on my watch.
I'm with him, Dakota says. Will they hear her voice shaking? Morgan doesn't like them, for one thing. And for another, how do you think they're going to react when they see a black woman with a gun in the middle of a firefight? From what she tells me, your boys think she's a problem. Her chest hurts. She crosses her arms as if to protect it. If she so much as blinks, she'll see it again. But she stands firm all the same, even as Ray glares at her and stands. Abe shoots her a questioning look, but she waves him off. She can handle this one alone. One step, two. Ray sets his hands on his hips. How do you know what Morgan wants? And at that moment, Dakota precisely understands the situation. She's gotten this look, this tone before, usually from angry wives, but sometimes angered husbands. How had she not seen it before? And just over his shoulder, where Jacobs is pointedly setting her tools away as if nothing else in the world exists. Yes, she understands precisely what is going on. Dakota smirks. That really a question you want an answer to? The twitch of his brow gives him away. He turns, running a hand over his mouth.
She's got a point,
Abe says.
It ain't really your business what Morgan wants anymore, Ray.
It is my business if my...
Ray starts. He's still turned away, but he rolls his shoulders and takes a deep breath. Jacobs catches Dakota's eye and then looks right back at her tools.
I think we're all here because we care about Morgan, right?
Says Danny.
Now, I think she's got a point. Cops might make this messy. You think she's headed to Nocturne, don't you, Ray?
Ray nods, walking back and forth in place.
I've got that feeling too. Saw that place when I read the book. Something about giving birth in a corpse. If anything's going down, it's gotta be there. We can all head down ourselves, take care of business, and get her out, Danny says. We don't need to call the cops.
Ray sniffs. He turns, although he's taken a few steps away from Dakota, back to the chair where he's picking up his coat. All right, no cops. But we shouldn't be tackling something like this alone. Whoever we're dealing with, they left Nocturne a wreck. We need backup. Abe slaps him on the back.
Don't you worry about that. I got some boys looking to work off some tension. Just let me make a few calls.
Don't tell me it's more of your pinko pals, Ray groans.
Bread and roses,
Abe says mockingly.
Here we go again. You got him started on the Eugene Deb stuff,
Danny says, rolling his eyes. Ellen doesn't look nearly as amused.
I've got to make a few calls, too. Someone's gonna have to cover my shift.
She transfers her neat stack of tools into a travel bag. The look of resignation on her face. If you offered that woman a free trip to Bermuda right now, she'd refuse, and it would kill her.
Really?
Danny says.
But you were just saying... Any of you know how to perform chest compressions? Suture a wound? Remove shrapnel? Too many people have gotten hurt already tonight. Doc's coming. Mrs. Moskowitz would never let me hear the end of it otherwise, Abe says. He picks up the phone and starts dialing. Dakota looks over the rest of them. Franklin helping Danny get dressed. Jacobs pulling out a smoke, and Ray shrugging into his coat. These are the guys she's trusting with Morgan. They're professionals, she tells herself. They've got this. But what if they don't? What if they never see each other again, and she never uncovers the mystery that is Morgan Knox? Dakota swallows. "I'll get the car started," Ray says. He starts walking, too, but he stops just long enough to catch Dakota's eye. From the look of him, he's trying to find the words. They've got to be written on the floor. He doesn't look at her when he finally finds them. "She's a hard woman to look after. I'm glad you've got her back on this one." She doesn't need his approval, doesn't even really want it. But when someone's trying to be better, you don't just let them fall face first. "Glad you're there too. Tell her I'll be at the usual spot, whenever she's ready." Craddock doesn't say a word to her on the way. She appreciates him for that. It's like with movies. Sometimes people fill the air with sound just because they can. Craddock doesn't ask her if she's sure. Doesn't tell her she's being an idiot. Doesn't look at her with those big doe eyes like, maybe she's drunker than she thinks. Something crunches beneath her shoes. Knox tries not to think about what it might be, because it sounded like bone, and there's no way it could have been. People have found corpses on the subway before, sure, but they tend to be fresher than the skeletons she feels scratching at her ankles. But, well, the city's always been fond of surprising her. Tonight's the night, ain't it? Tonight's the night. And no one else knows. It's absurd. Standing on a subway platform next to a dead man, the two of them on their way to confront a centuries-old cult, while some kid in a cap hawks his newspapers. "Read all about it. Read all about it. President Roosevelt sworn into office."
The only thing to fear is fear itself,
the kid shouts, and the words bounce off the tunnel walls until they become something else. Knox closes her hand around the detective special in her coat pocket. Kresnik probably had something smart to say about fear, but she can't remember it in the haze of the drink. Besides, he didn't know fear like she did. He'd never known hurricanes threatening to tear the roof off his house, never known the trenches, never known reality to coil around his throat and squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. So she squeezes the grip until it grips back. Eppur si muove, the letters pressed into her palm. Knox tilts her head back. She takes a drag of her cigarette, lets the smoke fill her lungs, like the noises fill her ears. No matter what happens to her tonight, that kid's still gonna hawk his papers. That couple canoodling a couple yards away, this is the only time she'll ever see them, and the only time they'll ever see her. The city will live and breathe without her if she dies tonight. Bells herald the coming of their great steel beast. The train roars into the station, scattering Knox's smoke to the subterranean winds. The doors open on a mostly empty car. Bad omen. She and Craddock step in. No talking, no nothing. Just standing toward the back of the car with their eyes on the exits. A chime. The doors close. The beast yawns back to life and takes off. Darkness swallows them, broken only by the dim flickering lights of the ceiling fans. She glances at Craddock. He's looking down at his breast pocket, at his photo. It occurs to Morgan that she doesn't own any photos of her family at all. Not one of her sisters in their Sunday best. Not one of her parents after their wedding. Not even one of her and Ray. What would she even do with one? Where would she keep it? How odd, she thinks, to keep a part of yourself so important out where anyone could see it. Her aunts had plenty of photos of her. They took one together every year. They thought of it as a treat. "You'll want to remember in a few years, mija," they told her, and she wasn't about to argue with them over it.
Show up at the studio and stand still for a while. That was all they were asking of her. And after all they had given her, how could she say no? They didn't even argue when she showed up in her work clothes. Ray always asked for a photo of her, and she had told him that there weren't any. She wonders if he's gone through Bay's dossier and taken a few of them for himself, just to look down on them, the way Craddock's looking down at his now. Won't be anything for him to remember her by otherwise. What a pointless thought. There's plenty, isn't there? She leans against the back wall of the car. The beast leans hard to the right as they make some unseen corner. 2 stops. That's all it'll take. And then they can walk from there. Craddock knows the way. She knows that without having asked him. Light floods back into the train as they come to another station. The announcer's voice is clear and crisp, almost startling Knox because it comes in plain English. 3 people get off. The couple and a man probably on his way to a graveyard shift somewhere. Stand clear of the closing doors. They're clear, all right. Back into the dark with Craddock and Knox and the other 6 people trapped in the belly of this creature, hurtling toward its destination. 5 minutes, tops, and they'll be neck-deep in it. She wants to ask Craddock how many times he's done this, but she doesn't, because she doesn't keep track of how many times she's wrestled the impossible in a dark alley either. Best to just keep their eyes on the prize for now. Do the job you're paid for, Knox. Not that she cares about the money anymore. But who's going to look after... An unholy screech. The powerful lurch of the world coming to a halt. Morgan has to grab hold of the emergency exit door just to stay upright. Her hand brushes against Craddock's. The 2 of them exchange a look, just as the rest of the lights go out. The car's gone as dark as a shadow's dream. Knox can hear herself breathing, and she can hear Craddock's ragged jag, too. But there isn't much else in the car. The others traveling with them don't get up, don't make a fuss, don't so much as fold up their papers. And there's something to be said about New York apathy. But this is different. Because the silence only lasts a moment. Soon overtaken by a horrible squelching Morgan recognizes all too well from her time at war. Blood in her boots, organs in her hands, a body underfoot. This is that sound. Don't pull the gun. They're going to say it's just a routine stop any second now. Close your eyes. Count to 10. The squelching gets louder. She reaches into her pocket, not for the gun, but for her lighter, and shoves that into Craddock's hands. He ignites it. And that is when the beast really starts to howl.
You're listening to The Shadow Files of Morgan Knox, narrated by Pilar Uribe. Produced by Realm, your portal to another world. Realm, listen away. The Shadow Files of Morgan Knox is written by Arsenault Rivera, Brooke Bolander, Gabino Iglesias, and Sunny Moraine. Produced by Marco Palmieri and executive produced by Molly Barton. Audio production, sound design, editing, and theme music by Amanda Rose Smith.